Today, we will be talking more about the legacy of Johnny Gaudreau and just exactly how much he impacted fans across the league.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jess Belmosto, and I have a special guest, Whetstone, joining me today. We'll dive into that in just a moment, but today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Kat, how are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you doing?
Football season started, which means we're closer to hockey, which is nice.
Yeah.
I wanted to take today to kind of bring in another perspective of another journalist as well as a Columbus Blue Jackets fan. I think that this has deeply impacted, obviously, your community as well. And tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of your love for the Blue Jackets.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Kat Whetstone, and I am a journalist originally from the Columbus area. I have not lived there in 12 years, unfortunately, but I still call it home. And so my Jackets fandom is a very funny story. Technically, I am of what people would call a Columbus Blue Jackets nepo baby.
What?
Yeah.
What is
So, my parents, up until we left Columbus, they were essentially like lifelong Ohio residents. And my mom is an Ohio State alum. So we know Columbus. We love Columbus. I was like literally born right off campus of Ohio State. So football season is where I am at my most unbearable. And they were living in Columbus at the time in 1997 when the NHL announced that they would be installing a franchise in Columbus. And they still talk about what a big deal that was, because Ohio State, up until Columbus got there, Ohio State was pretty much the entire sports economy. And a lot of people were very, very mad about the NHL putting a team there because it was Ohio State. It was an Ohio State country. They kind of like owned the city. And that's of where the famous Columbus curse comes in, with them building Nationwide Arena over the former state penitentiary. Technically, it's the parking lot that's built over of where people used to get electric chaired. It's a nice way of saying that. But yeah, I've even though my parents aren't hockey fans, I've grown up with the Jackets. I knew, like, the first hockey player I knew outside of Wayne Gretzky was Rick Nash.
The legend himself.
We love you, Rick.
Forever.
Love you. And ultimately, I think Columbus having a team was kind of like my first gateway into hockey. Well before I began following the Hurricanes when I went to college and all that. But yeah, I love Columbus. I had a grand old time when they swept Tampa in 2019.
You and everyone else but Tampa fans.
We will never forget that statement that Tampa put out after that. That was hilarious.
That's going to be a coffee pasta for like 75 years.
Thank you, Columbus, for that. We love you. Yeah. And ultimately, I've just been following Columbus on the side, and now I write about them for Offside News and follow them pretty intensely. I'm actually wearing my Patrick Laine jersey right now. So
yeah, no, that's incredible because you were you born when the Blue Jackets came to fruition in Columbus?
Yes.
Okay.
So I was born in 2003. So they had just gotten there. And I think all things considered of when hockey fans like make fun of the Blue Jackets and talk about the Blue Jackets, which
They're
normally
so
those two
babies.
things do tend to go hand in hand. They forget just of how young Columbus is as a franchise. Like we're
Yeah,
not like we're not a Toronto, we're not a Montreal, we're not a Chicago. Like
right.
we're pretty much like the Utah Hockey Club in terms of age. Like
Yeah.
still very, very young. And it's been a pleasure to watch him grow.
Yeah, and I think too, like the expansion drafts were very different. And not everyone is going to come out of the gate like Vegas, and well, now Vegas is kind of paying for their good years, so we'll see about that. But yes, so what is your favorite thing about the Blue Jackets?
Ooh, that's a phenomenal question. Quite frankly, there are just so many things to love about the Blue Jackets. I think that in terms of narrative, they always tend to do narrative very, very well. It does not matter of how bad they are. They will deliver in terms of just like player personality. Part of the best things about covering small market teams like the Canes or the Jackets is that these players, they're not media trained to death. They're not having to,
Personality.
yeah, like they're not having to be put in a box over and over again. Like there are some exceptions. I wrote about Laine and his trade. But ultimately, like as a whole, the Jackets are so involved with the city. Like you can't talk about the Jackets without talking about Columbus. And our friend Parker Wright, Garden State Parker on Twitter, once tweeted, "Everything is hockey except hockey, which is international politics." And that's a great way to kind of just describe this sport as a whole. And the Jackets, they don't have that. They don't have all of this pressure on them every single year. Their fans are just so passionate and so loyal, and they'll keep on coming back no matter what.
Show up.
Yeah. I've been doing some research lately for a Johnny article that I've been working on. And after his signing, the amount of people that got season tickets was just amazing. Yeah. Columbus fans, that they'll keep on coming back. And I think that's such a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. And coming up next, we are going to talk about Johnny's impact in Columbus, and we will be right back after this short break. You've heard us talk about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little bit different for you today. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season out of market game, and all you need is a Google account. Visit FanDuel.com. Download America's #1 sportsbook. Thanks everyone for tuning in to today's special episode of Locked On Flames. make sure you are following Offside News on Twitter so you can read some of Kat's work. Now, do you remember where you were when the signing that Johnny chose Columbus?
Yeah. I wasn't really into hockey at that time. I didn't get super into hockey up until I moved to Raleigh, North Carolina when I was 19. But I do remember seeing that headline and thinking, there's no way. There's no way that this is real. And from what I've seen from a lot of other Columbus fans, they all thought that same thing, that somehow Elliot Friedman was joking. It was a belated April Fool's Day joke from Elliot Friedman.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was kind of everyone's reaction. Especially after the Flames had just come off of that incredible season and that good playoff run. Like, everyone kind of figured they were just going to run it back and get that extension done. But, Johnny did what's best for him. And what has the impact been like? Like, what you mentioned season tickets, skyrocketing, but what else has did his name bring to the city?
I think it really changed of how people view Columbus as a franchise. Because before then, Columbus was like, and Columbus like still is, but before that signing, it was a really, really major conception that that nobody wanted to sign in Columbus. That it was that at this point, keeping Columbus as a full-time NHL team was kind of the equivalent of having like an elephant graveyard. That there was no point in it. That nobody wanted to sign there, because before then, Columbus had really gotten their stars through the draft, which was of how they got Rick Nash in 2003, or at the trade deadline, which was of how they got Patrick Laine from Winnipeg. And Johnny chose Columbus, and that was a big deal. And he was very, very open about choosing Columbus. It wasn't I was forced here. It was I chose to be here. I love it here. I'm going to embrace this city like my own. And in response, Columbus chose Johnny too.
The outpouring support I have seen in the last 8 days from Columbus fans is nothing short of what I expected. Unfortunately, this is an uncharted territory for Columbus fans. And I just remember during the vigil, I think it was maybe Boone Jenner, who said, "Thank you for choosing Columbus when no one else would." And that's a powerful statement. And just, I think it maybe breathed a little hope back into the hockey fans, and kind of okay, we have all these good young players and Johnny, this, our time is coming. And, people were super excited, and he's a great guy.
Yeah.
You don't have to, you never have to worry, in his media availability, not showing up or just being rude to fans. You hear these horror stories about athletes and just fan service, if you want to call it that. But, Johnny was always one for the fans.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. One of my favorite things about him was that, quite frankly, I'm not going to cry. I just put on makeup today. Was that he had this kind of authenticity and earnestness and kindness that most people spend their entire lifetimes trying to find. I wrote about this already, but this past year when Patrick Laine went into the player assistance program, and there was that really, really awful comment that I'm not going to repeat here to not get that any more attention than what it deserved. After the All-Star break, Johnny, in his media availability, picked up that mission that Patrick had, which was donating. I believe it was like, I'm not sure exactly how much money it was. I can't think of it right now.
Or $5,000, I think.
Yes, for every point that he scored to Ohio Health mental health supports, which is a big deal because in the hockey world, mental health is still very taboo. And in lots of parts of Ohio, it's still very taboo. And Johnny picked up that mission and he added on every assist. And when reporters asked him why, he said, "It's for Patty. I'm not doing it because an idiot comes out and says terrible things. It's for my teammate." And that, I think, shows so much about who he really was on a personal level. I was never lucky enough to interview him directly, but there was just this kind of genuine kindness that he was always showing. I've seen so many stories in the past 8 days that most of which have made me cry in some way, shape, or form, and I'm not a big crier. It just like shows how much Columbus loved him and how much he loved Columbus in response. There wasn't any ego. There wasn't any form of settlement. It was just someone of who loved hockey and of who hockey loved him in return. And even though I still laugh when I think about that clip of him in Calgary on Columbus home ice for the first time, and the cannon went off and he just like jumps.
Yep.
And he grew to love that cannon and like talked about it. I just
growth. Like that's character development in real time.
Yeah, it's just getting to watch that in real time was such a pleasure. And he was such a leader on that team, for sure, for both Calgary and in Columbus.
Yeah, I mean, the stories that we have heard about Johnny or the family as a whole sound just unbelievable. It sounds like something a Hallmark or Lifetime movie scriptwriter would write because of how picturesque and just ideal it is to be that kind and be that genuine and like existing in this world that we live in that's just horrible. There's bad news every single day, and the fact that they all go out and they're spreading their kindness, like more people need to lead like that. And I think Johnny really came into his own that last year in Calgary. He never really wore an A, and then at some point he did, and he called his mom and was so excited and was like, "Mom, like they gave me an A." And it's just like, I don't know how else to describe it other than like innocent. Like there's that sense of true joy, passion, like you live your life with like rose-colored glasses on, but like that's just truly how you see the world. Like it's great. And I think that speaks a lot to his parents and the kind of upbringing that they had and just how grateful they are, and how like you don't see people like that anymore, and it's sad.
Yeah, there's, like I was saying earlier, that kind of authentic earnestness is something that is so rare to see, especially in hockey, especially in pro sports in general, but especially in hockey, where there's hockey culture just running wild. And then you have this player from New Jersey that's on the smaller side that apparently had put pucks in his uniform at the combine to try and get and not appear like as small as he was. And it's just such a beautiful thing to see that being so celebrated now.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that picture. I have this picture that's just in my brain right now of the big nationwide building in Columbus. If you've never seen it, Google it. It's very pretty. It's a very nice building. And on the side of that building, it has said CBJ 13 for several days.
Oh my goodness.
That's of how much he was loved in Columbus. I'm not sure if there's ever been anything quite like it, even with Rick Nash still there. And maybe that may be me being of what they like the old timers like to call a young un in fashion. And if that is true, then please yell at me. But you just don't see that very often, and you don't see it being celebrated that often. You just, even before his passing, it was so celebrated in Columbus. I've been seeing videos of all of just like him when he would score or him during warm-ups. He was such a fan favorite. Quite frankly, I think he was probably next in line for the captaincy in Columbus. And it is just so deeply unfair that all of that and all of that goodness has just been taken out of so many worlds for nothing.
Yes, absolutely. We will take a quick break here and come back with more Johnny Hockey Talk. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out with us today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your favorite podcasts and on YouTube. You mentioned him putting pucks, on him, in him, wherever, for the Combine. And Craig Conroy shared a story last week about how, his first official weigh-in, in Calgary, he showed up and he was like, I've been feeling really, really sick lately. My stomach.
It's a Nutella story.
No, yes. And like, it's the innocence and naivety. Like, you think you're going to bulk up Nutella. Where are the adults? Where is the nutritionist?
I saw Jim Montgomery's version of that story, and the fact that he just started it out with, and I quote, Johnny has horrible nutrition habits. Anyone can tell you that is just, it's so funny. It's so funny. And it's not the kind of story you hear very often about these players. I will never not laugh when I think about it. I'm going to associate Nutella with Johnny Hockey forever because of that story. Like, that is just such a college kid thing to do. Yeah. And I love it.
Yeah. Like, there have been so many moments like that, I feel like, that have come out and everyone's just kind of like, this kid was like a fantastic athlete. Like, really changed the game for all like undersized players. But he just wanted to play hockey. He didn't know anything about his taxes, how to pay his rent, where these forms were, or anything. When he got to Calgary, and I guess he went to Craig Conroy and was like, where is this paperwork? Like, what do I need to do? Like, help. Or you didn't give them to me. And Conroy was like, John, they're in your stall. Like, like think to check there. Like, it's so funny because then you hear stories that are like, yeah, he didn't warm up on the ice if he didn't have to. He just didn't do it, or he'd ask for, us to get a day off from practice and just, nudge the older guys. And it's like, that sounds like the opposite work ethic of the player he was. And it's so funny because it doesn't add up.
It's even funnier when you think about him during warm-ups in Columbus, where he was like always there. He was always doing something with the puck, like doing puck juggling or something. And like, even as his career got past of what we all knew as the Nutella rookie, there was like that same earnestness to it. Mm-hmm. And it was always a pleasure. I was lucky enough to see him play in person. And when Johnny was on the ice, you knew it.
Yeah.
You just knew it. I was blown away when I saw him play in person. Even though it was my I hope both teams have fun game. It was the Canes and Blue Jackets.
I did that for the Bruins and Flames, so I completely
yeah, it was in Raleigh, and I think he probably gave every goalie a heart attack at least like 3 times during a game. And then you hear all of these stories about him off the ice, and you're like, these two things just like shouldn't go together.
Right.
And they do.
Are we sure this is the same person?
Yeah. Are we sure?
It is such a tragedy. And I'm so grateful that people have come out and shared these stories, because, the Eric Goodbranson story of him picking up John and not letting him go in a hug until he said, I love you, destroyed me. But it shows how much he valued those closest to him. And it's something that I think, you might pick up and like integrate into your own life. Maybe you hug someone a little longer next time, pay for the person behind you at the drive-thru, or just compliment someone. Like, just bringing some sort of positivity out of all of this.
Yeah. That was how I was feeling watching the Columbus press conference. Mm-hmm. For my own mental health, I did not watch that vigil, because if I think about it too long, I will start crying, and that is not.
Yeah,
I know that it's good for me. I just don't like it. And watching that press conference, and then seeing Boone Jenner walk out with that 13 on the polo, I just lost it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like choking up just like thinking about it. And I think that just like shows just how much he was so loved.
Absolutely.
Seeing all of his teammates come out with these different stories about him and his kindness and his earnestness, and of how much they all loved him and respected him, not just as a player, but as a person. I don't have the words to describe it. It's so awful and so deeply humanizing at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. One last question before we wrap it up, but do you think Columbus will retire 13?
I think they will. I hope so. I think Calgary will for sure do it.
Yeah.
I think Columbus will as well. Columbus, the only number that they have retired is Rick Nash's number. And I think adding Johnny Gaudreau's is a very worthy successor to Rick Nash.
Absolutely. Be in great company up in the rafters. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Do you have anything else you would like to add before we go?
This is just like a general note to the hockey world. Thank you so much for supporting Columbus right now and for supporting Calgary. Watching these fan bases that like barely interact during the season come in and lean on each other through this is magical. And even though everything about it just sucks, there's not a better word that I have, that it just sucks. But thank you for supporting Columbus. Thank you for supporting Calgary. Thank you for sharing your stories of Johnny Hockey. Thank you for letting these teams and these fan bases grieve. Continue that respect throughout the season, because things are going to be so very, very different for both franchises.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kat, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, I would have loved to have had you under much better circumstances. But Locked On Flames fans, you're probably going to see a lot more of Kat. Where can fans or listeners find your work?
I'm sorry, that has me just deceased. Thank you for...
It feels weird to say.
Oh no, it feels so weird. It's such a strange thing. Like, it breaks my brain, especially because I have had certain things that I've written. I wrote a piece about Patrick Laine's trade that blew up on Twitter, and that was very surreal that people actually read what I put out there. You can find me on Twitter at cat_Whetstone. Please spell my last name properly. I know it's hard. It is KAT_WHETSTONE. You can find me mainly just on Twitter. That's really where I am. I am keeping Twitter afloat.
That it is the unfortunate place to be.
But the hell site.
Yes. Thanks everyone for tuning in today, and I will see you all later this week, and hopefully we will have some good news coming out of Calgary with some RFA signings.